Hey guys, I've got some big news to share. The adaptive torque response was a great step forward, but what I came to realize is that essentially the adaptive torque response was just addressing the symptoms rather than the root cause. Over the last few weeks I've been talking to a systems control engineer, and he introduced me to the concept of cascaded PID loops. Essentially what that does is it has two control loops. The first one, the outer one, so maybe before I explain cascaded PID loops, the normal PID loop is very simple. What it does is it sees the angle of the board, and based on purely that angle it decides what current to send to the motor. And as we all know, this works really well ever since VESC 5.1 or whenever it was introduced. This PID loop works really well. But what we essentially want instead is we want the angle of the board to determine acceleration, not current. As a typical rider, you probably have no idea what the currents are, and you don't care about current. You don't know, you just want to have the right ride experience. And what you really want is when you lean forward a little bit, you want to accelerate. When you lean back, you want to stop. And at the same time, you want to stay balanced. The cascaded PID loops, they allow us to have an outer loop that just looks at the angle of the board and sets the desired acceleration. So if I just lean a little bit, I just want to accelerate a little bit. And I want to accelerate that same amount whether I'm going up a hill, whether I'm in grass, or whether I'm on a perfectly flat concrete road. And when I lean more, I want to accelerate harder. Right? You lean forward because you want to accelerate. You lean backwards because you want to brake, or you want to start riding backwards. And so this angle solely determines your desired acceleration. Right? And now then there is the second loop, the inner loop or secondary loop, and that one takes the measured acceleration, compares it to the desired acceleration, and adjusts the current. So if you're leaning forward, and let's say you lean forward just a tiny little bit, and the outer loop tells us you want to accelerate a little bit, and it's flat road, then it might need 5 amps to achieve that acceleration. Now in deep grass or going uphill, that same acceleration requires 20 or 30 amps. And that's what the inner loop does. It looks at your desired acceleration and sets an appropriate current to achieve that. And that's what that secondary loop does. So this is the basic principle. Now, there are two reasons why I was so reluctant in the beginning to even think about approaching this. A, I was really scared of starting a new control algorithm from scratch. As I said, I have no experience with this stuff, and I was a lot more comfortable taking Mitch's existing code and just adding little improvements there. Now, that's a big step. The other thing is, in order to control acceleration, you have to be able to measure it. And all the acceleration data that I have looked at so far was extremely noisy, meaning that you would need a lot of filtering, and you would need almost a full second to get a steady noise signal. So you have to average out the data or use some fancy filters to get the data to be smoother. But the more you filter, the more you introduce delays. So it'll take you 500 milliseconds of data to get reliable acceleration info. That means you have a 500 millisecond delay. That's too slow. So that was actually the biggest challenge, and I didn't even want to think about doing the cascaded PID loops until I had a way to get reliable acceleration data. I also looked at IMU data, but IMU data is A, slower, and B, it was also very noisy, and IMUs are very complicated, so I didn't even want to touch it. So I finally took up the courage to look into the motor control code, and obviously don't want to mess with any of the motor control itself, but I thought it can't hurt to just get reliable ERPM information out of it. So when I looked at the motor control code, I did see that every time that loop runs, the ERPM is being determined. And so I thought, well, if they determine it 20,000 times a second, then I should be able to filter that down, take essentially the average of the 20 samples and provide it to the balance loop in an averaged form, so it should be a lot smoother in theory. And so it took me a little while to get that. I had to add some logging and lots of details I don't want to talk about. But in the end, I now have reliable acceleration data. And with this reliable acceleration data, I can start implementing the cascaded PID loops. So that's what I did. And now we have our first version of that code ready, and I'm going to start testing it. So let's go and check it out and see how it works. So by the way, I used to think that the Pint and the XR, they use torque tiltback, but now I'm actually convinced that they are using this dual PID loop, and sure, it feels like torque tiltback, the effect is the same, but the reason they are able to do it so well and so smoothly is that they're actually using dual PID loops, and that allows them to keep their board so steady and consistent regardless of what the surface conditions are and whether you're going up or down a hill. First ever test of Cascade PIDs. Wish me luck.
Huh? I demand you take off the...
First ever test of Cascade PIDs. Let's hope that the board doesn't go crazy. Oops. Failed. This is the first ever test of the cascaded PIDs. I am very nervous. Let's hope the board doesn't start jumping and my motor survives. This is scary. Alright, wish me luck. Did it seem reversed to you? I think it's reversed. Take two. Jesus. Well, it's still not working. At least it doesn't go crazy, but why these long delays? It's still reversed. Take three. That doesn't work either. All right, I feel ready. Let's give this a try. Done a bunch of hand tests. Now it's time to step on. Holding on to those life-saving rings. And okay, a little choppy in the center, but look at that. Yes. Nice. So what comes next? Lots of testing, tuning, and troubleshooting. The control algorithm is extremely simple, but it all hinges on how accurately and how fast we can measure acceleration. That is probably the single biggest challenge right now. And to be honest, I'm not sure if the VESC motor control used for our motors is suitable for this kind of control algorithm. My motor is extremely choppy at low speeds. Basically every time it has to rely on Hall sensors. This isn't something you can really feel when riding it, but when zooming into the actual data we have to work with every millisecond, it becomes really obvious that there is a problem. And considering that I know next to nothing about motors, I have no idea if the choppy motor control can be fixed by just adjusting some of the many motor control parameters in the VESC tool, or if a different or better motor control algorithm is required. Or if I'm just stuck with low-quality motors that aren't suitable for precise control at low speeds in the first place. So now maybe you wonder about something I said in the beginning of the video, that I figured out a way to get high-quality acceleration data from within the motor control loop. Well, it turns out that I came to that conclusion based on data gathered at higher speeds, and I naively assumed that this would apply across the entire speed spectrum. But unfortunately, I had to find out that at low speeds, the acceleration data looks completely different. So yeah, I was really excited about this new approach, and I do still believe that cascaded PID control is ultimately the right thing to do. But it will require lots of hard work to figure out how to get suitable acceleration data to get this algorithm to replace the current balance app in the VESC. Maybe the IMU accelerometer data is actually more suitable than I thought. So this could be a potential way out, but I don't know. This stuff is hard, and the more I'm looking at it, the more I admire what Future Motion has achieved already years ago with their Onewheels. Very impressive. Alright, that's it for today. See you guys later.